Now, with regulators, airlines, and passengers all in the eye of the storm, where does Boeing go next? I'm going to take a look at the stock price reaction here because Boeing clearly under a bit of pressure with shares off just about 30% since the start of the year. You can see the movement to the downside here today, trading just above $182 a share. So we want to bring in Mike Boyd, Boyd Group International President. And Mike, where does Boeing go from here? We talk about the fact that the stock has been under a tremendous amount of pressure, off 30%. Do you see more downside risk here in the near term for Boeing?
Absolutely. Boeing has relegated itself into a second place, a distant second place behind Airbus with this entire fiasco with the MAX. This has been going on now for what, 4 years, 5 years now? And again, a lot of it's oversight. We haven't had FAA oversight. So well, this has to come into the program. But right now, Airbus probably is going to end up with about 350 to 400 more airplanes they wouldn't have had before, simply because Boeing can't produce. And Boeing can't really maintain the confidence of the airline industry anymore. There has to be a complete change at the top of that organization. Because right now, I mean, Airbus, I guarantee you, they're looking at taking that 70 acres they got down in Mobile and expanding their factory. Because over the next 5 to 6 years, those Dash 10s that aren't going to airlines, they're going to be A321s. They're going to need that production capacity.
Mike, Boeing kicking the tires on an acquisition of Spirit Aerosystems. Will that remediate any of the near-term problems and at least bring some of the production in-house fully for Boeing after they had essentially split out that group and it became its own entity years back?
Well, who cares really who owns the stock in Spirit? The fact is Boeing is its major, not only, but its major customer. Boeing should have been on top of that regardless of whether they own the entity or not. So this is just like a placebo. The fact is we've got to stop kicking tires here, and we've got to recognize that Boeing's problems are more than just one company. This is our biggest exporter. And right now today it is relegating itself to a distant second behind the only other game in town, which is Airbus. So if they buy Aerosystems or not, doesn't make any difference. We have to fix that. Plus, we have to fix the oversight. The FAA was on site this entire time. So they're not particularly clean on this either, and they have to move their game up as well.
And thanks so much for comprehending my typo in spoken form there in airlines versus Aerosystems. Very two different spirits there, Mike. So appreciate that. You know, what is the new MAX head that steps into this role? What should be the day one priority for them?
The day one priority has to clean out the what's gone on in manufacturing. Look, as I pointed out, in an airline, if you fix an airplane, the mechanic has to fix it. You have to know who it is. He signs off, or she signs off. Then an inspector comes in and signs off. What we found out now is that's not what Boeing was doing. They can't tell you who worked on that airplane that Alaska had the problem with. That is outrageous. An airline would get shut down for that. So what we have to have is now some really strong oversight, and the people at the top have to be held accountable, and that has not really been done yet. Throwing a guy under the bus doesn't fix the problem.
Mike, are you confident that it's actually going to happen this time? People will be held accountable?
I don't know. The FAA has not done a very good job of oversight up till now. Let's hope they do. Like I said, they're like Louis Renault in the movie Casablanca. They're shocked to find this is going on. They've been on site all this time, so they have to move their game up a whole lot more.
The FAA, if I'm remembering correctly, they are budgeting for a considerable amount more for their own capital expenditures over the course of this year. They're looking at air traffic control. Where would you like to see the budget for the FAA really take into account what needs to be looked at in the factory production, the manufacturing processes that they do have people placed within for quality assurance checks?
Yeah, the FAA's responsibilities are wide. There's no question about it. But the fact of the matter is they have oversight of what manufacturers are doing, what suppliers are doing, what overhaul facilities are doing. They got to move that game up. And boy, you want to get into foreign overhaul facilities, they got a whole lot of work to do. So, you know, one job I don't want is to be ahead of the FAA. But guess what? Someone's going to have to take that job and shake it like a dead chicken.
Mike, you've listed out a long list of improvements that Boeing should and needs to make here in order to win back the confidence. I'm curious, though, what, in your view, should be that number one priority?
Right now, today, we know this. Oversight of Boeing has not been acceptable. That probably means oversight of a lot of overhaul facilities may not be acceptable. It may mean other areas of the FAA. So they got to clean up their game. Again, Boeing's responsible for this, but the FAA has to be our guy on site to make sure that we don't have any more of these MAX fiascos or these Alaska fiascos that we had.
What are you going to be tracking, Mike, to understand what the mindset of the consumer is while they see headlines like this coming across?
It's getting dangerous. I mean, there was a period back in the 1960s when the Lockheed Electra started to fall out of the sky, and people literally were calling airlines to see, am I on an Electra or not? I don't think it'll get to that. But if this keeps going, because remember, if there's a Boeing airplane with so much as a lavatory that doesn't work, it hits the headlines as another Boeing problem. So Boeing is behind the curve here, but the real curve here is fixing this problem as quickly as we possibly can and having the FAA being able to assure us that they are on top of it, not now, but going into the future.
All right, in our conversations with some of the booking sites, maybe we will have to ask them how many people are filtering based on that. That might give us a little bit of an indicator as well in the interim period. Mike Boyd, always a pleasure to speak with you, get some of your insights. Boyd Group International President, thanks.
Thank you, sir.